Hello everyone. Today we're going to be talking about how do we convert between fractions, decimals, and percentages. So in all of our examples today, you're going to see what we're going to start with and how we're going to convert them into the other two types. So here's our first example where we have everything's in fractions and our goal is to change everything into decimals and percentages. So when we're first starting out here, let's say we take a look at part A. We have 1 divided by 2. Or you can read it as 1/2 or 1 over 2. Just keep in mind that that line in the middle is division. So there are many ways you can do this. So first of all, if you want to convert the fraction into a decimal, what you can simply do is on a calculator, do 1 divided by 2. You'll see here that it would come out to be 0.5 or 0.50. Either or, you can have as many zeros afterwards as you like, it makes no difference. Another way of doing this is, well, we know that to get percentages, ideally what you want is something out of 100. So if we try and change 1/2 to something over 100, then we need to think about, okay, let's say we go from 2 to 100. Well, how did we do that? In order to do that, we'd have to multiply the bottom by 50. So whatever we do to the bottom, we have to do to the top in order to be fair. So if I also multiply the top by 50, well, 1 times 50 would just be 50. And this would give us our percentage since it's out of 100. So this is known as 50%. Another way to do it is, let's say we prefer to get into decimals first. So we got the 0.50. Great. All we have to do now is multiply it by 100%, and that gives us our percentage. So for example, this can also be 0.50 times 100%. And we know that if we multiply by 100, we have to move the decimal point 2 spaces to the right. So in this case, if we move it 2 spaces to the right, you'll see here that if we did 1, 2, we end up getting 50.00%, which is all the same as 50%. So let's try part B. So again, if you have a calculator, you can go 1 divided by 10, and you'll get the answer of 0.10, or maybe 0.1. Again, the number of zeros afterwards, it doesn't matter because it's all the same thing. It's just basically used for more accuracy. Again, if you want to do this without a calculator, then you have to think about, okay, if I go from 1 over 10 to something over 100, so I can set that up like this, something over 100. Think about, okay, from 10 to 100, what do you need to multiply by? And you do the same thing to the top. So again, from 10 to 100, we know 10 times 10 would give us 100. So we do the same thing to the top. 1 times 10 gives me 10. Out of 100, it's 10, so therefore this must be 10%. Now let's take a look at part C. So let's say we have 1/4, or 1 divided by 4, or 1 over 4. Again, with the calculator, 1 divided by 4, you can say that this is equal to 0.25 in a decimal. Another way to think about it is 1/4 is, if you think about in terms of money, a quarter is worth 25 cents, so 0.25. Again, you can change this to a fraction over 100. So again, from 4 to 100, we have to multiply by 25. Do the same thing to the top here, multiply by 25. So 25 out of 100 tells us that this is also 25%. Now here's one where it's a little bit trickier. So let's say we have 7 over 8. So this is 7 divided by 8. You use calculator, we end up getting that this is 0.875. Without a calculator, then we have to think about, okay, how do we get it over 100? So if you think about it, this is a little bit trickier. So from 8 to 100, again, we're going to have to multiply by, if you want to figure that out, you can go 100 divided by 8, and that'll give you 12.5. So we need to multiply by 12.5 to the bottom, multiply by 12.5 to the top. So we multiply it to the top, and we get the answer of 87.5. So this gives us 87.5%. Again, another way to do it is you can take the 0.875, multiply it by 100%, which means that we move the decimal point 2 spaces to the right, giving us 87.5% as well. So with these questions now, we take a look where maybe it's not as easy to get that percentage, or let's see what happens if we can get over 100%. So 1 divided by 3, again, if we take a calculator, you guys will find out that this is 0.3333, and it keeps on going. We write this as 0.3 with a line above the 3 to show that this is the one number that keeps on repeating in the pattern. Now with this question here, this one's a little bit trickier to do. So you can imagine if I try to put this over 100, for example, over 100, then we can see here that if we want to go from 3 to 100, it's a bit tougher, but we can go 100 divided by 3, and what you'll notice is that we're going to have to multiply by 33.3 repeating. So we're going to have to do this to the top one as well, multiply by 33.3 repeating. So 1 times 33.3 repeating is just 33.3 repeating. Now we don't normally have a decimal on top of 100 as a fraction, but you get the idea here that if we were to convert it into a decimal, we'll just multiply by 100%, and again that this would just be 33.3 repeating percent. So again, whatever you have over 100, that's going to be written as your percentage. Let's take a look at F. So we got 16 divided by 51. So again, with a calculator, you'll see here that this one turns out to be a really long decimal number, and there's no repeating pattern really nicely. But usually teachers will say if you just get to like 4 decimal places, it's normally good enough. So if we do this on a calculator, we get 0.3137, and it keeps on going. But normally this is good enough. So here, again, if we have the decimal, multiply by 100%, we'll then get 31.37% if we were to round it. If not, then you can keep writing the remaining decimals depending on the accuracy of what your teacher is looking for. So let's do 22 divided by 5 here. See what we get. We'll get 4.4. So this is equal to 4.4. Now you notice here it's not 0 point something something anymore. So this tells us that the 4 represents that it's going to be 400%, and then the point decimal is going to be whatever is going to be remaining. So for example, we know that this is the decimal 4.4, so we do the same thing, multiply by 100%. If we do that, we end up getting 440%. So again, percentages can go past 100%. It just depends on what the fraction is or what the decimal is. So likewise, for h, you see here that in g, this is known as an improper fraction, where the numerator is bigger than the denominator. H is known as a mixed fraction. So in this case here, 3 and 5/9, the 3 represents the whole number in front of the decimal. So we're going to 3.5/9 gives us 0.5 repeating, which means that it's basically the 5 repeating for the decimal part. In terms of writing this as a percentage, again, we can multiply it by 100%, and we would end up getting 355.55, or you can put the repeating sign above the 5 if you like, percentage. Or if you want to round it, then depending on where you want to round it, you can go from there. So in these examples below, we now start with a decimal, and we want to convert them back into fractions and percentages. So we're going to try and do it in reverse for some, and in others we can just do what we've been doing so far. So when we're in decimal form, getting to percentages, super easy. Again, just multiply by 100%. So for this one here, we're going to multiply 0.17 by 100%, we get 17%. Once we get 17%, well, that's pretty easy because that just means it's just the same as 17 over 100. Because remember, your percentage is normally just over 100. Now let's take a look at one where it's a bit longer. So 0.12345. Again, I can multiply by 100%, which means the decimal moves 2 places to the right. So we get 12.345%. Now this written as a fraction is going to be a little bit different. So if we write this over 100, right, we don't want decimals occurring in our fraction. So for this one here, we'd have to take a look at how many decimal places are there in total. So we can count them. So there's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 decimal places, which means that that's how many zeros I need in the bottom. So for example, I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 divided by 1 and then 5 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can also use a calculator to check. Okay, so that is the idea on how you're going to put this as a fraction. But what happens if we have a repeating decimal? So 0.126, where 126 is constantly repeating as a pattern. So what it'll actually do is like 0.126, 126, 126, so on and so forth. In that scenario, again, we can try writing it out as a percentage. So it depends if you want to round early or not, but otherwise, again, you can multiply by 100%, and then you end up getting 12.6. Again, you understand the pattern is 126, 126, right? So it'll go 126, and you can put a repeating sign on the 126. Unless you're going to round earlier, like to the first decimal or second decimal place, depending what your teacher wants. Now, how do we deal with the repeating? Now, there's an interesting trick in math where, for example, if I have 126, where it's 3 digits, and it's constantly repeating over and over, the idea here is how many decimals are repeating is how many nines you put underneath it. So in this case here, I have 3 digits that are repeating. So therefore, I need to put 3 nines underneath it. So this means that it's equal to 126 divided by 999. And again, if you put this in a calculator, you'll see that this will give us the repeating pattern that we're looking for. For our last one here, we have 2.67. Again, 2.67 tells us that it's over 100%. So again, if I multiply by 100%, I move the decimal 2 spaces to the right, we get 267%. Now you can write this in 2 ways, right? This is the same as 267 over 100. You can also rewrite it as a mixed fraction, which is equal to 267 is divisible by 100 twice, leaving 67 out of 100 left over. So again, it depends what your teacher wants. Do they want an improper fraction or a mixed fraction? Most teachers usually want you to write it as a mixed fraction at the end. All right, and lastly, we start with percentages and we have to convert them into decimals and fractions. So again, with percentages, if they're nice, then again, it's pretty easy. We just put it over 100. So this is the same as 88 over 100. Now, a lot of teachers will want you to reduce your fractions to simplest form. So again, you can think about, okay, well, 88 and 100, we can both divide by 4. If we divide both by 4, we end up getting 22 over 25. In terms of writing as a decimal, right? Again, if it's 88%, we know that the decimal technically is after the 88. So we reverse it. So this time we divide by 100. So therefore move the decimal 2 places to the left. So if we were to move it, we would end up getting 0.88 as our decimal. 461%, again, this can be simply written as 461 over 100. Or again, if you want to write it as a mixed fraction, right? 461 divided by 100, it divides nicely 4 times. 61 is left over out of the 100, so there is your mixed fraction. In terms of our decimal, again, if we're at 461, decimal point is right here. We go 2 spaces to the left. So we end up getting 4.61 as our decimal. 100%. 100% is really nice for us because this is just the same as 100 over 100, which is just 1. So as a whole number, 1 is 100%. In terms of a decimal, right, again, decimal's right here, move it 2 spaces to the left. So we get 1.00, or essentially, because it's a decimal, you can also write 1.0 or 1 point, as many zeros as you like. Again, the zeros in the back afterwards is just for accuracy, but all this is the same thing. It's all equal to 1. But remember, you have to write it as a decimal though. Last one, 73%. This is 73 over 100. decimals over here, 2 spaces to the left, this is equal to 0.73. Alright, so hopefully this video has helped you master how to convert back and forth between all types of fractions, decimals, and percentages. Now make sure you practice the skill because you're going to be using it quite a bit in the future courses. So make sure you can convert them whenever you need to in order to use them more efficiently. If you found this video useful, make sure to like it and share it with your family and friends in case they need to know this knowledge as well for their future courses. Please subscribe to the channel and keep increasing your math knowledge. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!